550, 540, 630 and 720 where the graph is crossing. The graph of y equals cos x minus 1 between 0 and 720, and this is worth 3 marks. Now the key facts that you need to be able to answer this question are what the trig graphs actually look like. You need to know the shape of the trig graphs, and you need to know that they repeat every 360 degrees. So what happens between 0 and 360 will just be exactly the same between 360 and 720, because the graphs repeat every 360 degrees for the sine curve and the cosine curve. Now with the sine curve and the cosine curve, the amplitude, which is the maximum height the graph goes to, is an amplitude of 1, which means you've got a maximum height of 1 and a minimum height of negative 1. The cosine graph will start at the point 0, 1, so the coordinate 0, 1, and the sine curve will start at the point 0, 0. Now you'll be expected to know what the cosine graph looks like. And you can see down here in this little picture that's animated, the sine and the cosine graph are being linked to the unit circle that is down here and showing how these two graphs are actually formed. Now the cos curve starts at the coordinate 0, 1. It comes down and hits the graph here at 90. Then at 180 it hits the bottom. Then at 270 it comes back to the axis. And then at the top it goes back up to 360 at the point 1. So this curve will repeat between 0 and 360, and it'll do exactly the same when we go between 360 and 720. But the graph you've got to draw is the graph of cos x take away 1. So think about what the graph of cos x looks like and see if you can work out what this negative 1 will do to this graph here in relation to the axes that have been given. Remember in our transformations that if y is equal to f of x, then if I've got a function of y equals f of x plus a, this is the same as a translation of a units in the y-axis or 0a. So that means that this graph, if it has got plus a, it will be shifted up by a units in the y-axis. So what does this negative 1 here on the end do to this graph of y equals cos x? Remember, you've got to go between 0 and 720, whereas this graph here is between 0 and 360. Press pause, have a go at drawing out the axis, using a pencil and ruler, and then using your pencil to draw the graph between 0 and 720. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. Well done guys, hopefully you've managed to get the answer and you have drawn a graph between 0 and 720. So this negative 1, we have got a plus a, which means it moved up by a units, but we've got a negative 1. So instead of starting at 0, 1, our start point is going to be at 0, 0, because all of these points that are drawn on this graph are going to move down by 1. So instead of starting at 0, 1, I'm going to start at the point 0, 0. By the time I come to 90, I've moved down from 0 down to negative 1. So I'm going to go from here, 0, down to negative 1 at 90. Then at 180, which is here in the middle, I can see I was at the point of negative 1, so I'm going to go down one further. So I'm going to start here at 0, go down to negative 1, then I'm going to go down to negative 2. Then it's going to repeat what I've just done the opposite way. So it's going to come back up to negative 1. And then it will come back up to 360, where 0 is the maximum value. So this curve is like a bell coming down here, and then it will repeat up to here. Now the sketch means you do it freehand, so I would just put a little mark where each of these points are, where it's going to cross. And then the graph will repeat exactly the same for the next section of the graph, with exactly the same as what we've just done. But you've just got to join it together with a smooth curve to get your 3 marks. The graph you should have drawn should be looking like this. So we start at the point 0, 0. At 180, it comes down to, at 90, it comes down to minus 1. At 180, we're at negative 2. At 270, we're at minus 1. And at 360, we're back up to 0. Now you will get 1 mark for getting a graph going between a maximum value of 0 and a minimum of minus 2 or negative 2. A mark for getting the shape of the graph correct and drawing it with a nice smooth curve. and also a mark for having a maximum value at 360 and 720. So you can see here at the point 360, I'm at a maximum point here, and also at the end at 720, I'm at a maximum. If you look at the shape of the curve between 0 and 360, it's exactly the same as between 360 and 720. So look at your points carefully, make sure you've marked them off so you can see clearly where these points are awarded. The mark scheme on this question shows there are 3 marks. B1 is a method mark for showing the shape of the curve. Another B1 for showing that the minimum was at -2 and the maximum was at 0. And the third mark between 360 and 720 in your x-axis. So this is the shape of the graph that you should be drawing. So make sure you have drawn a nice clear sketch using a pencil to make sure that you have drawn it accurately. Make sure the sketch is nice and smooth and it's just one continuous line. You don't need to draw lots and lots of lines over the top of each other. If you found this video useful, please share, like and subscribe so we can all get great at maths.